Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to run through an A to Z list of the most iconic movie characters in horror. Start from A, work all the way through to Z, and I'll talk about the characters that have made a big impression on me and that are most memorable from the movies that I watch. So as we go through this, feel free to get involved, let me know your A to Z picks in the comments below. You may agree with the people that I've gone for, but inevitably I had to leave off a lot of cool characters. So we'll get straight into this A to Z list. This one should be a fun one. So for A, we have Ash Williams from the Evil Dead movies. Now we start Evil Dead with Ash as this unassuming young guy who just starts getting terrorized by demons and monsters in that cabin. And we see him work his way through the movies to become the hero of the franchise and even kind of a saviour role when we get to Army of Darkness. And credit to Ash and Bruce Campbell who plays him. He really does take a beating in these movies. He gets thrown around and beat up in all kinds of ways by these horrible creatures. But he does it with a ton of charm and character and lots of cool one-liners along the way. So my iconic character for A is Ash Williams. For B, we have Brundlefly. Now, few horror movies are as awesome yet horrifying yet tragic as the 80s version of The Fly. Seeing Seth Brundle go through that horrifying transformation and slowly and disgustingly turn into this fly monster is just a really tough thing to watch. And the notion of all these physiological changes happening to you and you can't do anything about it is really terrifying. And then the final scene of the movie where the kind of final form of the Brundlefly sadly emerges from the teleportation pods is just so well done. Credit to Gina Davis in that scene because she really makes it and ramps up the way you'd feel having to go through that. So my pick for B is Brundlefly. For C, we have Carrie White. Now there's a few characters I could have gone for this letter. Candyman, Chucky, Cropsy from The Burning. But I've always found Carrie White to be a really interesting character in horror. The way she elicits kind of sadness and sympathy for her character is not something that I see very often in a horror movie. And few things are more iconic for me in horror than seeing Carrie White in the blood-drenched dress creating all that havoc at the prom. So my pick for C is Carrie White. For D, we have Dracula, and more specifically Christopher Lee's portrayal of the Count. It's my favourite portrayal of that particular character. Whether it's Christopher Lee's impressive stature, his booming voice, or even his pointy finger as he points at his victims and guests, Christopher Lee's portrayal as Dracula is one of the most iconic things you'll see in cinema, full stop, not just horror. Every time he's on screen in any of the Dracula movies, I always find him absolutely captivating. And of course, Dracula is one of the most well-known names in horror anyway. So my pick for D is Dracula. For E, we have Ellen Ripley. Maybe the greatest female character in horror ever. I'm not sure, let me know what you think. But similar to Ash, we see Ellen Ripley go through just kind of a normal, average kind of flight spaceship lady to becoming the badass soldier warrior, killing off all the alien creatures throughout the Alien franchise. And Ellen Ripley is great because she does become this kind of tough, hardened character, but she never kind of loses her compassion or humanity or the essence of who she was from that first film, which I really like. And she has some great moments throughout the whole franchise. So my pick for E is Ellen Ripley. For F, we have Freddy Krueger, one of the most iconic characters in horror, with his horrible facial features, his hat, his sweater and his razor glove. He is one of the most iconic people you'll see in cinema, and has also kind of etched himself into pop culture as well, which is really awesome and impressive for a kind of a slasher monster killer to do that. But I really enjoy Freddy as well because he's very entertaining. The Nightmare on Elm Street movies were able to kind of play around with the special effects and the death scenes and things like that. And Freddy has some kind of really awesome one-liners and sort of changes it up and acts out in different ways. And yeah, it's just a really fun character to watch across the Nightmare on Elm Street series. But yeah, as I say, one of the most culturally iconic characters around. So my pick for F is Freddy Krueger. For G, we have Ghostface. Very simple yet effective design on this one. And I remember when I first saw that mask in the 90s, it really freaked me out. But Ghostface for me, I always think kind of encapsulates the sleekness of the 90s and is still an iconic character now as we've had more and more Scream films. Plus he has that really cool voice whenever he's menacing people over the telephone. So yeah, another one of the culturally recognised characters as well. So my pick for G is Ghostface. For H, we have Hannibal Lecter. And what a elegant and intriguing character this is. Made even more so by Anthony Hopkins' amazing performance in Silence of the Lambs. And what I love about that particular movie and that performance is we know straight away that Hannibal Lecter is a dangerous serial killer. He's eating his victims. He's not someone you want to mess with. And the build up to meeting him and seeing his character is really scary and unnerving. Yet when we meet him and he starts talking to Clarice, you almost think like, well, you could have tea and biscuits with this guy, he's alright. And then of course later in the movie you are starkly reminded as to why he's so dangerous and such a horrible character. But yeah, certainly a character with lots of depth, a frighteningly intelligent character, which makes him all that more dangerous. So yeah, my pick for H is Hannibal Lecter. For I, we have Imhotep the Mummy, played most famously by Boris Karloff, but I'm going to go for the 1999 Arnold Vosloo portrayal of this one. This movie was very big when I was growing up. I've always enjoyed it. I think it's really entertaining. And I think Arnold Vosloo is an underrated actor anyway, and he had a good look for this mummy creature. He was quite intense with it, and I actually quite like what they did with the CGI effects, and he had that giant mouth, and he had that sort of face in the sand, which I thought was really cool. They did some good stuff with this one. They modernised it in a good way, and I just have always liked Arnold Vosloo's portrayal of the Imhotep character, not taking anything away from Boris Karloff, of course. So my pick for I is Imhotep the Mummy. My pick for J is absolutely going to be Jason Voorhees. Probably my favourite character in all of horror. Friday the 13th is my favourite franchise. Just the look of Jason is so cool. That hockey mask, and whether it's the early renditions of Jason where he's kind of just a deformed guy in the woods, up to the later movies where he's a more of a zombified Jason. Everything they do with him is awesome. And I love how his looks can be quite malleable. They can be changed depending on what movie it is. You can always play around with his features and it's still Jason. And he's still just totally fantastic in every movie that he's in. And the inclusion of the hockey mask in part 3 I thought was just a genius idea. And of course it's now become iconic. And I just can't say enough great things about Jason. He is so awesome. So my pick for J is Jason Voorhees. For K, we have King Kong. And a bit like Jason Voorhees, no matter what iteration of Kong it is, he's always awesome. I would particularly point out the 1930s version or the Peter Jackson version. But I do have a soft spot for King Kong Escapes as well. That one was cheesily entertaining. But yeah, Kong is, of course, an incredibly impressive figure in cinema. Another quite tragic tale, but I still love to see him doing his thing and smashing people up and just being the giant, awesome King Kong creature that he is. So my pick for K is King Kong. For L, we have Leatherface, specifically from the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and specifically from the first half of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when he's donned with the apron and the scruffy shirt and the mask without all the makeup. That for me is the iconic looking Leatherface. He just legit looks like he's a psychotic killer who's just stumbled out of a barn somewhere, and they've never quite been able to replicate that just sort of genuine, dingy, horrible look that he had in the first movie. It looks so genuine that it's really quite unnerving. And of course, whenever he's around swinging his chainsaw, it's just one of the most iconic things you'll see in horror, and a character from one of the most effective horror movies out there. So my pick for L is Leatherface. So my pick for M is Michael Myers. Again, one of the most iconic horror characters out there. So well known, it's hard at this point to really have anything to say about him. But again, he's another one that's just simple yet effective. That brush white mask and the blue boiler suit is all you need, and you've got a horror icon right there. And he's another one who his looks kind of changed throughout the movie, for better or worse. But I pretty much like all of the iterations of Michael Myers. And I even like the kind of the new ones with the David Gordon Green trilogy. I really like that old looking mask that he has. It's really great to see that they've kind of aged him, but he's still a total badass horror icon. So my pick for M is Michael Myers. For N, we have Norman Bates from Psycho, the icon for normal looking people being really, really scary. Norman Bates is polite, mild mannered, and loves his mother, but as we all know now, has a very, very dark secret there in the Bates Motel. My pick for N is Norman Bates. For O, we have Count Orlock, the creature from Nosferatu. So I took a bit of liberties there with the name, but yeah, O, Count Orlock, who I really wanted to get this guy in because even after over 100 years, the look of the Count Orlock creature is still freakier than most modern horror movies, with his creepy eyes, his fangs, his strange facial features, and the creepy elongated shadow that he creates as he climbs up the staircase. This is such an iconic movie still, and still a creature that freaks me out and just makes me feel uncomfortable, which for a movie that is that old to still be this relevant and effective is just amazing. So my pick for O is Count Orlock. For P, we have Pinhead from the Hellraiser movies, and if that image doesn't encapsulate what a awesome horror icon he is, I don't know how to get it across. But I cannot imagine seeing that on the poster in 1987. I would have been straight at the cinema, I can tell you that. But what I love about Pinhead is he's not really this kind of evil monster that you might get from this kind of image. He's really just kind of a keeper of the box, and is summoned as and when. And when he's in it, he's more just kind of a neutral. He's almost like a judge or magistrate character who brings upon the characters whatever they kind of bring upon themselves, which I find very interesting. It would have been easy to make him just an evil, antagonistic demon that kills everyone, but he very much operates within the confines and the rulings of the box, which is pretty fascinating. So my pick for P is Pinhead. My pick for Q is Quint, the doomed fisherman from Jaws. And Quint's another fascinating character. He's completely manic and a little bit unhinged, but you kind of learn later on some of the terrible experiences he's had on the USS Indianapolis that might spur on this unhealthy obsession he has for catching Bruce the shark. And Robert Shaw, notoriously quite difficult to work with on set, and a very large character in real life, but Quint was one of the big reasons that made Jaws so entertaining and so captivating, and he still has one of the coolest deaths in cinema ever. So my pick for Q is Quint. For R, we have Regan MacNeil, who starts off as the sweet and charming 12-year-old girl from The Exorcist, and who unfortunately ends up being the terrifyingly possessed girl who the priests have to come in and exorcise. And again, this is another really iconic one, but props to Linda Blair. I don't know how they got a 12-year-old to give such a terrifying and believable performance, and she absolutely nails this and makes this the terrifying, iconic movie that it is. So my pick for R is Regan MacNeil. For S, we have one of my favourite monsters of all time. I can't even help smiling talking about this one. But S, we have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, which is hard to put a finger on why I love this guy so much, but I just do. And I love my giant monsters anyway, but I think it might be just the kind of the atypical dichotomous look of this guy. He's not a giant scaled fire-breathing slimy monster. He's a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man who just looks like he's having a great time, and is just so irreverent but fun to see, and he's kind of cute, he's kind of terrifying. He's a great decision in movies. I don't know who came up with a giant marshmallow man, but I'm so glad they did, and it's one of my favourite things ever. So my pick for S is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. For T, we have the Tall Man from Phantasm. Now, I've voiced several times, I'm not a huge fan of the Phantasm movies. They're a bit too weird for my taste. But there's no denying the iconic Tall Man. He is a very commanding character and a great addition to those movies. Doesn't have a great deal of dialogue. He's mainly just in there going, boy, and things like that. But whenever he's on screen, you are drawn to him. And he really does chew up the scenery and bring a lot to those movies. And credit to Angus Scrimm as well. He portrayed the Tall Man in all the Phantasm movies. He did a great job, and he nailed it right up to the point of his death. And yeah, his legacy will live on. So for T, my pick is the Tall Man. For you, we have Uncle Red from Silver Bullet. Yeah, not the most iconic horror character ever, but I kind of struggle with you. Let me know if you can think of a better one. But I did really like Uncle Red in this movie. He's probably my favourite character. I like the relationship he has with Corey Haim in this film, and he even hooks him up with that Silver Bullet high-powered wheelchair, which was pretty awesome. And throughout the film, he's kind of on and off the fence with this werewolf idea that Corey Haim's character keeps going on about, and I like that element of the film where he has to be convinced to get involved and help. And Gary Busey is always fun to watch on screen anyway. So my pick for you is Uncle Red. For V, we have Van Helsing, and there's only one portrayal of this character for me, and it's Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing just brought such a gentlemanliness to his roles, and the Van Helsing character really complements that, and he's always a joy to watch in any of the movies that he's in, playing that character. I remember when the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing movie came out, which was okay, but was very over-the-top, action-packed and CGI-laden. And I always remember something that my dad said at the time, and he said, you don't need all these crazy special effects. You just need Peter Cushing with his bag and crucifix. And that's always stayed with me. And I always thought, what a wonderfully poignant way to say it. So my pick for V is Peter Cushing's Van Helsing. My pick for W is the Wolfman from 1941. paving the way for most werewolf movies after this. It's a great film, one of the iconic Universal monsters. And in this one, I really like the sympathetic portrayal of Lon Chaney's character. It explores this lycanthropic curse in an unwanted fashion and him trying to stop it and not wanting to have this upon him, which I thought was really interesting. And it's been done a few times over the years in other movies. So my pick for W is the iconic Universal monster, the Wolfman. My pick for X is the Xenomorphs, the alien creatures from the Alien franchise. One of the ultimate predators in cinema, I would say. It's a monster that whenever I watch those movies, I just think I would not stand a chance against these creatures. Very sleekly designed. They've got a great kind of fleshy yet mechanical look. Very iconic. And I really like how they developed an entire ecosystem for this creature within the movies, from the face huggers implanting the eggs, the aliens coming out of you and then growing into the giant xenomorph creatures that you see, all sort of spawned by the queen alien. It's a really really inventive and impressive process, and most of the movies in this franchise are really good anyway, particularly of course the first two. And yeah, the Xenomorphs are just an absolutely awesome looking creature. So my pick for X, although I didn't have many other options, although Xenomorph came to me quite quickly, which was good. My pick for X is Xenomorphs. My pick for Y, and I think I'm saying it right, is the Ymir from 20 Million Miles to Earth, YMIR. And it's the monster that grows throughout the film into the giant creature that starts causing havoc around Rome, I believe, and starts smashing up buildings, has a fight with an elephant, and it's just a great example of a 1950s monster movie, great stop motion from Ray Harryhausen, and it's a creature that gets a lot of screen time as well. So if you want an example of a great 1950s stop motion monster movie, 20 Million Miles to Earth is a great place to start and has a really cool monster. So my pick for Y is the Ymir. And my pick for Z is the Zombie from Zombie, aka Zombie Flesh Eaters. You know, the one that slowly rises out of the ground. It's all rotting and decaying. It's got the worms in his eyes, and the one that attacks that woman. It was the one that made it to various posters and DVD covers, so it's always been imprinted in my mind. Shout out to the zombie that fights the shark in the underwater scene. I mean, that was amazing. But yeah, that image of the rotting zombie with the worms and yeah, just that horrible look is one that made up my childhood. So my pick for Z is the zombie from Zombie Flesh Eaters. So there we go, guys. That's my pick of my A to Z iconic horror characters. These are the guys that I chose. Let me know what you think of my list. Do you agree with these picks, or did I miss off some other iconic characters who you would have gone for? Like I say, feel free to give me your A to Z list in the comments below. Be really interested to see who you guys remember the most from the movies that you watch. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.